Welcome to Politico Show on Lions Wire. Today is June 23rd, 2024. And today our political analysis is going to be provided, as always, by a renowned political analyst and scientist, Ilya Levkov. Welcome to the show, Ilyusha.
Thank you. Welcome our viewers. I hope it will be interesting. I tried to chop it into the 3-4 parts, and I hope it will be of interest. The first part is that I discovered yesterday was the anniversary of my first article in the United States. It was an extended letter to the New York Times, which was wrote on 22nd of June, 1971, and it dealt with events that in 2 years later has given us the Yom Kippur War, with all the problems, including the U.S. manipulation of supplying arms to Israel. So briefly, I will tell you, you will show it on the screen, and people, maybe I'll put it somewhere else where it can be reachable and visible. And this is primarily the first step of political union between Egypt and Syria, and the Soviet Union, and then with Syria, which consolidated this triangle, which, as I mentioned, opened the war on Yom Kippur in 1971. As I mentioned, I don't want to read everything. However, I go step by step, and most recent documents that are being signed and exchanged, and I will read. It's so difficult to read for me without glasses, and with glasses.
Do you want me to read, Ilyush?
You know what? You can read it, or you can put it later on. Maybe artificial intelligence can read it, okay? The last paragraph, simply I want you to know, because it is the characteristic of the processes
should be borne in mind when we consider the various proposals for solution of the Arab-Israeli conflict.
Yes, exactly, should be born. That is all. So therefore, I called, of course, I did know about the struggle between when manipulations that were made exactly as in the old days. I do not compare it exactly with the concept that Egypt would not start the war before having received from the Soviet Union the long-range bombers, because this way they can start assure the movement of their tanks from the border of the Sinai into Israel and to the cities which are in Negev, and from there it ain't far to Tel Aviv. So all this was a concept which, in a way, was the dominant one. So as long as the Egyptian did not receive the Soviet or long-range bomber from the USSR, there will be no war. This is a look at this. This is once again one piece of information that became a dogma. It became a cult in the Israeli army and Israeli intelligence. One bit of information. The same thing happened on October 5th, 10 months ago, when the Hamas, once again, the Israel were guided, said the Hamas is deterred, and therefore will not begin a military conflict. And under this, again, concept, actually idolatry, the absolute trust in this issue, they, Israelis, assured the prime minister there will be no war. But what else does it say, which I will just briefly mention? That says that the Israeli army was purified. That is, there were no people, no generals who said, no, we cannot be that blind. We have to be alert to the following possibilities. And why nobody said so? Because they knew if they will say such a thing, which is denied or goes across and against the dominant concept of the present then Israeli concept, uh, his his career in IDF, Israeli Defense Forces, is over. Do you understand? So it's not only that there were no smart people questioning something, but that was a threat. If they pronounce it, they will be kicked out of the army. This is unbelievable. It's unbelievable. It's when a one-eye man closes the other only working eye. You understand?
Yeah,
And
yeah. It's a major threat to security. If the army is afraid that much.
Because who was deterred? You know who was deterred? The Israeli military leadership, who could not afford or didn't dare to afford to think differently. You see, these were the problems start, It's not somebody, general 2 or 3, make a mistake. It's a situation where the rest of the military staff are afraid to voice their opinion. And this is a very, 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 well to say, dangerous, extremely dangerous.
Let me ask you a very pointed question. Where did this ideology of invincibility came from? Was it imposed on purpose, or it just became part of culture sort of on its own accidentally?
Yeah, it's a hubris. In English, you call it hubris, i.e. absolute assurance in your capabilities, abilities, knowledge, and intelligence. And when you are in such situation, you will make mistakes because there is no limit for people fooling other people. And this happens in in normal life, millions and millions times, and in politics. Listen, and in politics. And the point is that even the committee of Agranat that really checked the sources who were responsible, it was a kind of a whitewash. So it was there was no traitors, there were different people who, during the process between the 6-day war and the 6 years past, they became already people who do not think outside of the black box or black square,
Yeah.
And this is the most dangerous because it's a self-imposed illusion. You understand? When it's self-imposed, then how do you cure it? Until you get a spank, so what happened in the 6-day war and repeated itself on October 5th, 2023.
October 7th. October 7th.
7th, yeah. So here I want just to touch a couple of points that was reviewed 2 days ago with the former head of Mossad, and his name is Pardo. And here he says, think of that just piece of information. He said that this was a false alarm. That is, the Israelis were falsely alarmed. After all, listen, it's a head of Mossad, former. but he knows, like most of the people will never know in their life. So Pardo says, there was not such alarm. There was no need to really to say it was only two tanks were destroyed, 1,300 killed, 200 hostages. You understand? And Bibi sounded alarm to Biden, help us, help us, help us. Now, Bibi didn't say, hey, send us your air carriers. Not one, but two. He didn't say it. He knew what he was talking. He wanted to assure, because the question to what extent Israel had enough ammunition follows from the same Pardo, who 2 lines later, he said, uh, within a week, Israel exhausted most of its shells for tanks and airplanes. Do you hear me? That
Yeah.
there were no bombs and no shells in Israel enough, because Israel didn't prepare. Never Israel has prepared itself for a long war. Israel concept in general, yes, from the day of Ben Gurion, was to prevent the war, to attack, never have a war on your territory, because we cannot sustain more than
Few
7 to
days of
10
yeah.
days.
So it's always
Therefore,
about blitzkrieg for Israel.
well, yes. So the question here is, if he knew, if he himself, Pardo, head of the Mossad, tells now that there were not enough ammunition after 1 week of war, so he sure knew that before, when he just said in the previous sentence that all those things that there was a snafu, and everything is in danger. The life of Israel is in danger. That is, Bibi realized it instantly. He ignores it in his, because he by himself says within a week Israel didn't have enough ammunition. That explains why a week ago Benjamin Netanyahu asked urgently Biden administration to provide it with bombs and shells. But what's interesting is that he plays now, 10 months later, almost 9 months later, Prado plays on the innocence of partial information of Israelis, what exactly were in the storages. Indeed, there was a small public conflict with a member of the Knesset, she was fearsome, Tali, forgot her last name, Gottlieb, Tali Gottlieb. She was sounding the alarm that we don't have enough ammunition, but she is a member of a Knesset, could not state the numbers and all that. But she said, I know that we don't have enough ammunition. But and therefore, self-explanatory, when you don't have any ammunition, you cannot expand the war, you cannot start really bombing Gaza by itself or Hezbollah in addition without having enough ammunition. So let me go a point or two, because it characterizes the head of the Mossad, because he claims that those people, he uses many negative specific words and undertones, i.e., this is a different Israel, the second class Israel, the messianic Israel. This is for him to have an idea of Zion, to have an idea of immortality of Jewish people and the state of Israel is strange to him, because he even says, in a way, he quotes Hillary Clinton. He said, it takes a village. You understand? He uses this word. It takes a village. Hillary Clinton said it to educate a child, right? Now, in this particular case, former head of Mossad says, it takes a village to defend and to create the international public opinion. Once again, his roots are exclusively on the democratic liberal values. And this would be a separate issue in my forthcoming project. But what I wanted to say is just the cabinet had to release hostages. Now, his plan of work was the following, and I will finish it. To what extent? He said Israel had to deal exclusively in the first, and war started after 3 weeks. So Israel had to deal exclusively with the release of the hostages. The war could have continued later on, 5-6 months later. He's too smart and he's too knowledgeable to say such thing, you understand? Because if Israel didn't undertake any action, so this will be a total loss for Israel among Arabs and a world opinion and in the eyes of the Israelis. You understand? You cannot stop the war and suddenly hope and be completely under the control of Hamas, because they decide how many people will be traded, for what, for whom, in what intervals will be people dead or alive. It's no way, it's a loser projection to think that you can first, what is the assurance that Israel would have conquered all the tunnels within those 5-6 months? We are now already 10 months, and there are still places, and we now realize that the hostages were placed in the families, in regular apartments, or in hospital rooms, under which were entry to the tunnels, etc., etc. It would be a never-ending war with no positive, a single result, you understand? And the head of the Mossad now claims the opposite, that this should have been the thing, and he adds also to lock the Rafah. The first entrance is to cut between Gaza and Egypt, the southern part place where huge tunnels where trucks could enter. Yes, this many people said so, advised that the military activity of Israel should have started from occupying this place rather than the north. However, what we don't know, or we do know, all the rockets, 90% of the heavy rockets that were shelling Israelis came from the north part of Gaza. So for 3 weeks, to let the Hamas bomb Israel without any response or not being active there, it would have cost Israel a lot of, I'm sure that many rockets would have fallen on Tel Aviv. Can you imagine photos of Tel Aviv bombed with all these high rises, etc., and what kind of a verdict the Arabs? It would have inflamed. We would say we want Israel 10 times over, and Israel will have to explain, no, but our hostages, but we have some of our hostages released. You understand? It's a very refined affinity I'm trying to bridge here. But as the head of Mossad, it's a no question that Israel had to inflict the area where Hamas was from Israel the most.
Ilya, let me ask you a question. The part of, after head of Mossad stops being head of Mossad, does he keep getting updates from?
Sure.
He does, just like American president, even if it's an ex-president, Trump, Obama, they all.
one American president, even simply it's a law, but there were buddies. He knows everybody in Mossad. They're 30, 40 years old from the in the army before, and then in Mossad, and then.
So he's very well versed as to what's going on even now.
He did not. He does need every morning a special offer delivers information. Those guys are one unit, one organic unit.
Yeah.
They're family friends. They're everything. They have children. They have grandchildren and all that thing. They're very, very close. Therefore, there was nobody who was thinking outside. Because if he only would mention it, they would say he is not one of others. You understand, of us. And that's what happened recently to that general who was fired. Although he is an excellent general, they let him hang it now for a year and a half. And I'm sure that he will appear in the future pages of Israel as a leading person, be it in the army or be it in the military in the political life. So let me see if I want to. Now, the question is, here what he explained, why Israel treated differently the Mossad. Why? He wanted, Israel had some hope, said if they will allow Hamas to be stronger, the Hamas will try to capture the West Bank. West Bank will revolt against it, and there will be a clash. In this constellation, that is West Bank, Hamas, and Israel, the formula, that is political formula, 2 states for 2 nations, would become irrelevant. You understand, when you have 3 states, Israel, West Bank, and Hamas. So this way, the concept of 2 states for 2 nations, which sound logical, would wither away in the political jargon and aspirations. And this what they're behind the thing. The other thing is he really, as I mentioned before, said the independence, entire leadership should have fired itself, both the political and the military. And in such situation, the exchange of hostages would have been possible. Do you hear what he says? Said beginning of the war, the Israeli government has to fire itself, create a new elections, leadership had to be, and this would have created an option that the Hamas will be willing to release hostages. You know, it's unbelievable.
Such just crazy.
You know, and I can send you this to, you know, maybe we can translate it. It is in Hebrew, unfortunately, but this kind of thinking, that's the point. He said Israel never have a strategy on strategy. They have only a tactical approach. You know, all of Israeli government had such thing. You know, the ministers, Gantz and Eisenkot, said joined the war cabinet 4 days thereafter, and now they resigned. He claims they should have resigned before. That is, he comes and support those people who are protesting, as I mentioned, and demanding the throwing away the government. I have the quotes, but I will not go into this.
So my question to you is this. Gallant, Gantz, all these guys, they talk about government, namely Bibi, not presenting strategy for Gaza. But what do they suggest? What are they? Do they have strategy that they presented publicly?
No,
they don't.
They don't. That's the point. They have not whatsoever. They think we have to go to elections. That is, The idea is if they win, and by the way, they decided to leave the government because their rating was falling, falling, falling. So therefore, they saw almost no options. If they continue to support the national government, with a veto in a way, because all of in the war cabinet were three people, all uh, all decisions were taken unanimously. Unanimously, no decision was implemented if one of them was dissenting from that point. So the opposition that joined the government in a way had a veto. They had a veto in their hand, you understand? And yet, and yet they voted, and there was only those implemented those decisions that were taken unanimously. So therefore, they had no choice. They felt to themselves. That is, the question is, are you dealing this was the main accusation against Bibi Netanyahu. He thinks about himself. He thinks about politics, not about the state and the nation. This is big fat question if it indeed so. However, the opposition behaved itself in recent weeks precisely along those lines.
Because they
Okay.
use the conflict to prop up their
But
numbers, so to speak.
yeah,
And their behavior is revolving around that area. Okay.
let me touch two brief points which have to do with Israel, and we close this. And that is that one of the hostages that was taken. She's a 75-year-old Ada Sagi. She was kidnapped, and then on October 7, and after 65 days or so, was released. And then she was asked, and she was the old peacenik, what you call, you know. She would have joined Abraham Lincoln Brigade, if you know what it is,
Yes.
joined the forces in Spain. So in any case, she was asked, she asked if she still believes in peace. Ada, a lifelong peace activist, answered sadly, I don't believe in peace now. I don't believe. Sorry, I changed my mind. Here what it took. It took lives, thousands of lives of Israelis, that some people who supported Hamas in Israel had to change their mind. It is unbelievable. All right, listen. I would like to switch now briefly to United States. As you know, there will be a debate this coming Thursday. We'll talk maybe about this, but first of all, I would like it's a bit of information which is meaningful. What happened with all the protests in the United States? To what extent the American public disapprove Israeli politics? Well, 80 to 82% American public support the Israeli war against Hamas. A. B. As you know, AIPAC, it's an organization, American Israeli Committee, and they support openly people that support Israel. In the primary election to the House of Representatives, and they won 75% or 73% of candidates. That is, the candidate that AIPAC supported became a majority of people that voted for the right of Israel. That is, they just won in the primaries. That will be, of course, their opponents. That is, the Democrats will oppose them in the final election. But the mere fact that this number of congressmen already committed themselves on behalf, positively on behalf of Israel. It's a very indicative and what? And assuring something that not everything is lost as the opposition in Israel continues. I had some pieces and bits of information that the protests in Israel, unfortunately, are still extremely rude, ugly, and the temperature hasn't been truly been lowered, that they use very, words, the fascists, they call it the same thing, the same head of Pardo, Mossad, Pardo, we spoke that he spoke very negatively about that second Israel, that it is messianistic. That is for him, it's a curse. For him, these people are not real and true people who created Israel and who are for the Israeli democracy. And indeed, they are for democracy, but for the religious, national, or patriotic democracy, but not for everybody, because if people, Israeli Arabs or outside Arabs, want the annihilation of Israel, I don't think Israelis should close their eyes in their mind and disregard it.
Ilya, can I ask you a brief question on
Yes.
AIPAC? AIPAC, its policy generally, my understanding is to support the current Israeli government, whoever is in power.
No. Here I want to tell you, not current, any.
Any.
If there would be any.
Yeah, that's what I meant really. By current, I mean any, whoever, whatever is the current policy of Israeli government, this is what they support. Now, was there a change recently? What's the relationship between AIPAC and opposition? Is there any relationship at all? Does AIPAC play a role?
Hold a second. What opposition? Israeli?
In Israel, Israeli opposition, yes.
Israeli opposition
versus AIPAC.
They try not to. You see, the government of Israel and the forthcoming visit of Netanyahu at the end of July, they talk about general American concept. They're asking now and always never to have American boots on the ground. Never Israel voted or acted against the United States, and the value of Israeli position in the Middle East, it saves American $25 billion per year. It's much more that Israel gets support, which is most of the money by buying American ammunition, stays in America and being paid to American
companies.
More than that, I think, I don't remember I told you this or not, but the Israelis decided now in these weeks to come back to American M16 rifle because they tried to produce it during these months since October, and it didn't work effectively. So the Israelis also now buying the M16 rifle.
I see. Doesn't Israel have a better rifle of their own?
Yeah, they have. I cannot answer on this question meaningfully. Why? They have Tabor.
Tabor is a better gun than M16 or Kalashnikov.
I don't know. I will verify it. Okay?
Got it.
But I don't know.
Interesting.
So, debates. Let me talk a little bit, a couple of minutes about debates.
Yes,
and you see, Theoretically, as I mentioned, it's the first time when two candidates are running with their experience as a president of the United States, with their agenda. And thus, it's not what I will do for you, it's really what each candidate did already for the nation. Therefore, the picture should be clear, crisp. However, nothing is clear and crisp because we communicate by tongue, and tongue doesn't have a single bone. Therefore, people can say various things which are in question and highly questionable and without being shamed. So what is happening now is it's how much there will be October surprise in June. You understand? October surprise, it's a concept, was coined by my classmate, Gary Sick, who wrote a book. It was about the last days of Carter when they claimed that Reagan sent George Bush Sr. to Paris and they met with some representative of Iranian revolutionaries, and those said that we shall release hostages, American hostages that were 444 days only, not before the Reagan will swear to become a president. That is, Reagan was already in the midst, and it was before election, even, that is before November 1980. So they assured so-called the representatives of Republicans and Reagan that they will not release and negotiate about hostages, but with a new administration. And indeed, this exchange happened on the hour. You know what? On the hour when Reagan on the January 20th was taking the pledge of the allegiance to become the president, within an hour or less, the American hostages have been released. So therefore, since then, the concept, which is called October surprise, it's pulling a rabbit out of the hat. However, in this case, this October surprise already began. And this is what we will see, what the debate and how Iran will respond. Because on the one hand, they are not afraid of President Biden, and Biden still wants to cajole them, want to create something very, very diffuse, and in best case, that is to have a coalition of Sunni Arabs, including Saudi Arabia, and he hoped also to have Israel in it. However, the price again was two states. You understand? That is the price for his diplomatic maneuver. Because what happened, which I forgot to tell you, 5 days after Reagan was in Israel, immediately after the massacre, came Blinken, and Blinken told Blunt, listen, we have, United States has some plans in this region. We would like you to be aware of it. What were these interests? They said it in the first day of the war. Palestinian state. This was the interest and deeds that the United States proposed to Israel. Have a Palestinian state, we will have a union with Saudi Arabia, etc., and everything will be sweetie and nice. So this what they wanted. However, this part of the head, you know what the head of the Mossad said? Israel, so they asked Israel, what are your plans? That is, the United States asked Israelis, your plans. And Israel refused to buy. But it's not Correct. You see, Israel said the goal of the war is destroy Hamas to the ground and no Palestinian state. So once again, the head of the Mossad talks in Hebrew to the nation, and yet he is pulling this kind of a cheap and irresponsible shots. I'm curious. I don't want to go into this, but an hour ago I received this interview from my cousin in Israel, who is in between, Mr. In Between, and I told him, listen, I read it very, very clearly, but it shows you that two people can read the same text, and get the conclusions which are diametrically opposite one to another. That's what is unusual. Now, the other thing, what will be the Biden, the concept there will be to first of all, to talk of the agenda. They will think the advices it given to Trump is, of course, to withstand and not to be angry. He's an angry man, and Trump advisors advise, be calm. What I would have said, what I would have tried, I would have tried to shake President Biden by throwing a question which requires a knowledge of facts and numbers. And I'm sure he will be unable to reply. You could say, you claim that...
He will concoct something.
No, he could not. But then, there are 700 new working places. How many of those 700 new are the illegal workers? Because Trump can say the trade union oppose you because you undercut Americans. You understand? That the idea is not that he will be unable to bypass the question, but if he will try to answer, he will get nervous. And when he gets nervous, he is become unspeakable in full meaning of this concept, He will, something happen and he becomes extremely innerly nervous, as it happened on several occasions. So, and what I have it here is the adults. The point is for Trump is to be what they call, to be the adult, though he is younger, but to be the adult seasoned politician, although he is neither older than President Biden, nor he is more experienced. The point is that he decided to go the right way, to have America strong, to have America affluent, and he threw, let's say, one of the so-called June when he said no federal taxes on tips. You understand? It will come to this in the debate, Here I am saving people $500 a week from federal taxes. You understand? $500, it's what? $6,000 extra, $6,000 that will not be federally taxed. What did you offer? Yeah. All right. On this note, it's a tough part.
All right. Thank you very much, Ilya.
And we'll...
Bye-bye.